Sleepy Winks is excited to bring you our adaptation of The Three Little Pigs, written and performed by Zach Connor.
Hello there, my name is Red, and I am the oldest of the three little pigs. We live happily and comfortably together in my house on the prairie, but it wasn't always so. Let me take you back to when me and my two brothers first set off on our own. It was a beautiful day on the farm. My brothers and I were just finishing our lunch of oats and vegetables when my mother trotted over to us. She sat us down in our pen and said,
"Red, Woody, Herb, it's about time you left the pen and struck out on your own. It's a big world out there, and you need to learn how to get by."
At first, my two brothers and I were hesitant. We had never ventured too far from our home before, but we agreed it was time to start to learn how to be independent. So we packed up our things and headed out into the world. Now, don't get me wrong, my two brothers and I didn't go too far from each other. Quite the opposite, in fact. The three of us all stayed within a mile or so we could still visit, have a meal, and never lose touch. Little did we know, however, that none of us were ever really alone, and were constantly being watched by someone we called the Big Bad Wolf. The wolf was a dapper gentleman, always wearing fine clothes and a top hat, but don't let that fool you. We didn't call him bad for no reason. The Big Bad Wolf had a mean side, a hungry side, and my brothers and I were on the menu. But we will get to that later on. Now, when my brothers and I first set off on our own, the first thing we needed to do was build shelter. Herb, who was the lazier of the three of us brothers, took the easy way. He gathered up some straw and began to construct his house. Woody and I told him over and over again that a house made of straw was not safe. It would not do well in poor weather or wind, and it was, of course, a fire hazard. But Herb did not listen to us. He kept on building his house, and before long it was complete. About a mile or so further down the road, Woody found a nice spot to begin to build his home. Knowing that his brother had made a terrible decision in building his home from straw, Woody took it upon himself to gather many pieces of wood and began to build his home. Woody was a very proud pig and did not like to receive criticism or feedback on how he was constructing his home. I tried many times to tell him that he needed more nails and a sturdier foundation, but Woody would not listen and kept on building the way he wanted. Finally, another mile or so down the road is where I put up my own home. I figured if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. So I decided to construct my home from brick. I am somewhat of a handyman and got pretty good at laying brick and setting mortar. My brick home was built in no time at all. It was sturdy, strong, stayed cool in the summer due to the windows, and warm in the winter from the fireplace I made sure and put in. One day, as the weather was beginning to turn colder, the dapper wolf decided it was time he made his move. He approached the door of my youngest brother Herb. He knocked on the straw door and heard Herb call out, "Who is it?" "It is I, Mr. Wolf. I've come wondering if perhaps I could join you in your home and get out of the cold weather."
"A wolf, you say?"
"Yes, sir, I am a wolf. Now please, little pig, let me in."
"Not by the hair of my chinny chin."
At this point, Mr. Wolf was very frustrated, and he yelled,
"Very well. If you will not let me in, I will force you out. I'll huff, I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in."
Mr. Wolf backed up from the house, took a very big breath of air in, and with tremendous force he blew as hard as he could. Herb's house, being made of straw, could not take the hard wind blown by the wolf. It broke into many little pieces of hay, and along with Herb, swiftly blew away. Shortly after this debacle, Mr. Wolf arrived at Woody's house. The wolf, having calmed down from his running with Herb, knocked politely on Woody's door. At first there was no answer. Mr. Wolf pressed his large ear against the door. He could hear whispers coming from inside the house, and knew Herb must have ran to this house after being blown away. He began to drool a little at the thought of getting 2 pigs for his supper. He knocked again and politely said, little pigs, please let me in." Almost immediately he heard the 2 little pigs reply, "Not by the hair of our chinny chin chins." The wolf felt his frustrations grow again and replied, "Fine, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." The wolf took an even deeper breath of air this time, and blew so hard on the wooden house that even he was pushed back. The wooden house creaked and cracked from the harsh wind from the wolf, and eventually it blew right off its foundation, along with my 2 brothers who were huddled together inside of it. Funny enough, I was just finishing chopping wood for the fireplace when my 2 brothers came crashing down next to my home. They got up quickly and ran to me, telling me what had happened with the big bad wolf, and that he was probably on his way here. I ushered them both inside, assuring them that there is no way the wolf could ever blow my house down. Sure enough, a little while later there was a knock on my door. "Who's there?" I asked politely. "Little pig, it is I, Mr. Wolf. Be a good chap and let me in out of this cold, won't you?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Wolf, but my brothers have come to visit, and I just don't have enough room for more guests." "Oh, there are 3 delicious... three of you little pigs in there? Well, then, I must insist. Little pig, let me in." I could hear the malevolence in his voice. "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." The wolf, frustrated as ever, howled and replied, "I'll huff, I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." I laughed and replied, "You can try." The wolf gathered all the air his lungs could handle, and he blew harder than he had ever blown before. Trees were blown away and my shrubs went missing. But this time, my house stayed right where I had built it. The wolf was stunned. He was tired from all the huffing and puffing he had already done that day. So he began to think of another plan. As my brothers and I finished eating our meals, the wolf saw the chimney on my roof and had an idea. He climbed to the top of my home and began to make his way down the chimney. Of course, this was not hard for me to realize, as I heard him stomping around my roof. "Herb? Woody, would you be so kind as to put some wood in the fireplace and start a fire?" I asked calmly. My brothers did so, and before long a nice roaring fire had started. We could just see the wolf's tail drop down from the chimney when it was licked by the flame in the fireplace. The wolf howled and scrambled back up the fireplace, leapt from my roof, and dove tail first into the nearby river, where he was quickly swept away. My brothers and I never heard from the big bad wolf ever again, and we lived our lives to this day happily ever after.
The end. Sleepy Winks hopes you have enjoyed this adaptation of The Three Little Pigs, written and performed by Zach Connor. As always, thank you from the Sleepy Winks family.